This first viewer, they shared that their boss is being really stingy and they want to know how they can negotiate for a better salary.
61% of people just don't ask for salary. That's actually a crazy amount of people who just don't ask. So for those 61%, they've already lost, if that makes sense. Because the worst thing that can happen is the boss says no, right? Yeah. So the first tip, I would just say ask. AI tip, pro tip. You can use, not ChatGPT, Google Gemini. Obviously Google Gemini.
I'm gonna edit that one in. Is there one time management hack that will work for everyone?
I'm not sure if you use to-do lists, Ray, but I'm sure there are days where you're like, you got to half of your to-do list. And it's like 10 p.m. you're going to bed, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of daily highlights sort of helps with that, whereby you choose one thing at the beginning of the day you're definitely going to do. And this thing could be something you need to do, like for work, preparing 15 slides for a PPT. Or it could be something you want to do, like calling your parents or calling your mom.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the day, if you complete your daily highlight, you know you've won for the day. You were successful.
You get your dose of
dopamine. Or
dopamine. Yeah. Hello， 我是阿滴。今天的职人访谈系列非常的舒服，跟你讲，因为大家都知道我是一个大 J 人，就是我很喜欢一切都规划的好好的。今天我们要访问的这个专家呢，他是我觉得比我还要 J 的人。
比你还 J 听起来不是很舒服。
不是，就当然这个是好事，就代表他在工作上面非常有效率。跟你讲为什么他需要效率，因为他除了本身是 Googler 之外，他在 Google 好像有9年的工作经验，他同时也是一个百万 YouTuber， 所以他要一次经营这2个就是非常 demanding 的工作，但是还可以出来开一个线上课程。之前就有看他的 YouTube 频道，他叫 Jeff。然后他的频道上面就是会分享一些可能工作效率啊，或是企业升迁之类的一些 tips。然后他现在因为要宣传他的线上课程，人在台湾，我就想说可以抓住这个机会来跟他访问一下。
你已经这么 J 了，你还要问他什么问题？
他跟我相比起来，他有很多企业上面的经验，因为9年嘛，然后在 Google， 然后各个位置。我这次就有在 IG 上面问大家，就是你对于工作上面，或者比如说工作效率上面有什么想要问的问题，我们把这些问题请 Jeff 来回答。希望通过这一集可以让大家提升自己的工作效率或者是时间管理的能力。All right, we have a very special guest today. Let's welcome Jeff.
Hi everyone.
All right, Jeff. First off, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jeff, and although I do work full-time at Google, a lot of my colleagues actually refer to me as the full-time YouTuber and part-time Googler.
Okay.
And every time they make that joke, my manager laughs a little bit less hard every time. So I'm really worried, but it is really nice to meet you, Ray. I've watched a lot of your videos, and thanks for making the time.
From my perspective, I know a lot of friends who work at Google. And of course, I know what it takes to run a YouTube channel. They're both very demanding full-time jobs. So my first question, it really just comes down to why. Why do you do this to yourself?
So first of all, I have to say I have a very supportive manager, and I'm totally not saying that because it's performance review season. But I think the reason I started YouTube actually goes back to my college days, like ages ago. I struggled with getting like job offers basically. So when I started YouTube, I started off making job search related content, and I wanted to make it evidence-based. So it's objective, not subjective.
Okay.
So for example, one of my most viewed resume videos was based on a study done by this expert, Austin Belsack. He analyzed 126,000 resumes. 126,000.
Okay.
So data doesn't lie, right? For example, one of the findings was if you include a LinkedIn profile in your resume, you usually get a 2 times callback compared to the resumes without LinkedIn profiles. So I wanted to make sure younger versions of myself didn't have to go through the ambiguous process, if that makes sense, trial and error, so they could actually just find a job easier.
Okay, so you're solving your own problems.
Yeah, basically.
But that doesn't answer the question, why do you do this to yourself?
I would say there are 2 things. The first is corny but true. The team I work with is just too good, like it's too fun.
Okay.
I really enjoy what I do. I'm a product marketing manager. I get to run scale communication, offline events. I won't bore you with the details, but all of that gives me a lot of energy. And when I was younger, I used to teach SATs to high school students.
Okay.
So I really like teaching as well. So the YouTube allows me to teach, and the full-time job allows me to, you know, pay for the bills.
So YouTube for you, it's more like a hobby?
For now, yes.
For now? Okay.
Or actually, if my manager watching, it's just a hobby for sure. Yeah, it's just a hobby for sure.
People will be curious how you manage your time each week.
For me, when I started in 2020, I struggled a lot. I set a target for myself back then. I would make one video every week for 2 years. So along with my full-time job, it was really demanding.
Yeah, it is.
And I was approaching burnout every other month, if I'm being very honest. It was not a fun experience. But a silver lining is after I approached burnout a few times, I want to do more research on productivity and time management. And that's when I came across experts like, I'm not sure if you heard of them, like Cal Newport, David Allen, he has a best-selling book, Getting Things Done, Tiago Forte, like Building a Second Brain. Because of their frameworks, I sort of made my own system, called the CORE workflow, C-O-R-E, capture, organize, review, and engage.
I think there's an overarching theme here. You're always solving your own problems. And because you're in that situation where you have to juggle both things at the same time, you're approaching burnout, so you have this burning desire, you have this very crucial need to solve your own problem so that you can tackle both things at the same time. And then you kind of master the works and you became like a time management productivity guru.
You summarized it much better than I did. Yes, basically yes.
Okay, cool. Can I ask how long that took for you to do your due diligence, do your research, and then finally reach a conclusion on what's the best way to approach your two hustles at the same time?
Initially, it took me around 3 years because there's a lot of experimentation that goes into it. Just to give a very simple example, the first step of CORE is capture, right? The idea is our brains are really good at coming up with new ideas, but not good for storing them, not good for remembering specific things for a long period of time. So the idea is you need to capture information as quickly as possible into something that's built for it, your phone or a physical notebook. It's a lot about experimentation, figure out, okay, these are the types of information I need to capture, and then I have to organize them, review, engage, so on and so forth. But I would say, to answer your question, 3 years at the very least, and I'm still sort of improving upon it.
Coming from me personally, I want to ask one last question. Is there one time management hack that will work for everyone?
Very easy, because it comes from one of my favorite productivity books called Make Time. And they have a total of 87 techniques. But the idea is you're not supposed to use all of them. It's like a cookbook. You pick and choose. So for example, I've read the book, but I only use like 3 to 4 of them.
Okay.
So my favorite one for sure is the concept of a daily highlight. I'm not sure if you use to-do lists, Ray, but I'm sure there are days where you're like, you got to half of your to-do list, and it's like 10 p.m. you're going to bed, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of daily highlight sort of helps with that, whereby you choose one thing at the beginning of the day you're definitely going to do. And this thing could be something you need to do, like for work, preparing 15 slides for a PPT, or it could be something you want to do, like calling your parents or calling your mom.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the day, if you complete your daily highlight, you know you've won for the day. You were successful.
You get your dose of
Dopamine.
dopamine accomplishments from that day. That's very interesting, because you can also work that into things that you always postpone. But it's not urgent, but it is important. For example, calling your parents, that's not really urgent, but it is important.
For sure.
But because you block that time out, I think that's very good. Yeah, I could incorporate that immediately, starting from day one.
So it's not that complicated.
Yeah, it's not that
bad.
Yeah,
not everything's so complicated.
Okay. I feel like we're on the same page as like personality-wise and how we approach work. Because have you ever taken the MBTI test?
Yes. Yeah.
What are you?
I'm ISTJ.
I'm INFJ. So your thinking patterns and how you perceive information is basically the opposite of what I do.
Yeah.
But we are the same in the last part, where it's judging or perceiving. MBTI, it puts you into one of two opposite spectrums, right? So judging and perceiving, judging meaning we like to plan stuff, basically. Yeah.
Structure.
Yeah, structure, yeah. And I'm
no
like,
flexibility, like no spontaneous stuff.
Yeah. So I'm like a big J person. So I can get where you're coming from, but I feel like it's really rare for me to meet someone who is more J than I am. And today, it's really, I think, the first time I felt like, oh, this is what it feels like to be someone other than Ray, looking at Ray.
You just reminded me of a joke about the Myers-Briggs MBTI test. My teammate sent me a screenshot because someone asked, Jeff seems so high maintenance and anal, what is his MBTI? That's not even a joke though, because the other person says, I think I know what it is. And then they were like, what do you think? They were like, J. They literally go 4 J's.
No, I don't think I'm at this stage. I'm like stage 1 cancer maybe. I'm just JJ.
You're the messy one, like between the two.
Yeah, I am the messy one between the two of us, which is rare. So the goal of our interview today, besides getting to know you, is of course we wanted to answer some audience questions. They're about time management, they're about productivity, they're about, I think, a lot of career development. So let's get into them. This first viewer, they share that their boss is being really stingy and they want to know how they can negotiate for a better salary?
I wouldn't know how that feels, Ray. I mean, I've never experienced it, so I can't help with this specific question.
Okay.
But if I were to hypothetically answer
Yes,
the question, so I'm very data-driven. 61% of people just don't ask for salary. That's actually a crazy amount of people who just don't ask. So for those 61%, they've already lost, if that makes sense. Because the worst thing that can happen is the boss says no, right? Yeah. So the first tip, I would just say ask. AI tip, pro tip. You can use, not ChatGPT, Google Gemini. Obviously Google Gemini. ChatGPT
I'm gonna edit that one in.
I've never used ChatGPT. Google Gemini. You can use Google Gemini to role play the salary negotiation.
Got it.
So you can literally tell Gemini, hey, this is what I'm making now, this is what I want to make. Role play as my manager, pretend to be him or her, and have a conversation with me. So this takes out all the nervousness, right? You're talking to an AI. But at the same time, it preempts what their arguments and you can prepare accordingly.
Yeah. You have a mental picture of what's about to go down. Right, next question. He got let go from an admin job. He's unemployed for 6 months and every interview leads to silence. So how can they improve their chances?
I could definitely relate because the economy generally right now is pretty volatile. If I were to oversimplify the entire job search process, I would break it down to like 5 steps. There's the research phase, the networking phase, the apply phase, the application phase, the interview phase, and the follow-up and negotiation phase. So the reason I'm bringing this up, Ray, before I answer your question is because if you break it down to these 5 steps, there are easy ways to figure out where their failure point is. For example, this person you mentioned, he or she isn't getting callbacks from interviews. Based on this logic, it's the interview skills. Your resume and networking is fine. You're getting interviews, you're just not getting asked back. But if you're not even getting interviews, you know your networking and resume are the issue, if that makes sense. So based on this question alone, I would say it's probably the interview skills. And for interviews, there's an 80-20 rule you can apply. The majority of interview questions fall into 3 categories. The first is a self-introduction, like tell me about yourself. The second is behavioral questions. So behavioral question is, tell me the time you dealt with a hard customer, right? A difficult customer. Situational is hypothetical. So imagine if you were faced with this challenge. So if you have a framework for each one of these questions or types of questions, you're gonna be good to go. Have you heard of the STAR method? Like situation, task, action, result? No. It's a very popular method, but I don't think it's as effective as CARL, C-A-R-L. Context, action, results, learning.
Wait, hold on, I have to pause here. You have so many frameworks. How do you fit so many frameworks in your head? Like a dozen different frameworks for every situation. But I think that's really interesting because it allows you to store information and to organize them and to be able to explain them.
Probably because I'm JJJJ.
Because you have your YouTube channel. I think you did a couple videos about how you structure your strong answer during the interview or how you prepare your resume. You could go look at these videos right here. I'm sure Jeff will talk about the different structures in depth here, I think, because we don't have that much time here in the interview. So like if you want in depth, go to these videos. Next one, said that working from home is great, but chores is taking up too much of their time while they still want everything to be tidy. How do you schedule in tasks in like a busy work day so that you still have time to have a better work-life balance?
Do you often clean your apartment as well, like once a week? Okay,
yeah.
So we're the same. So the reason I ask is because, to be honest, I enjoy some household chores. For example, doing laundry, I'm a clean freak. I don't let anyone else touch my clothes. But the rest of it, for example, let's say vacuuming or like cleaning the floor, I don't really like. I use a concept from Daniel Martel's book. So basically, Dan Martel, he wrote this book, Buying Back Your Time. For example, if someone earns 50,000 Taiwanese dollars every month, right? You divide the 50,000 by 160 hours. Why? Is 40 working hours every week? Times 4 weeks, 160. 50,000 divided by 160 is like 300 something. So the book says, if you can find someone for less than that amount to do that chore for you for the hour, it's worth it. I sort of follow that. And when I do clean or when I do use stuff in the apartment, I put it back to where it belongs. Like my wallet, my phone belongs here. My lotion belongs here. Like I put it back to where it belongs after using it.
You guys would be great roommates, or like you're driving each other crazy?
No, I think for sure we'll be great roommates because I also follow the rule of putting everything back to where it belongs. Every scissor, every paper clip, it has its own home. Shout out to my sister. I think it's really strange because we're brought up in the same family. But we have we're the opposite.
Oh, okay.
So she's very not tidy. Yeah.
Okay.
The last question. So this viewer writes that they're working overtime with no extra pay and it's exhausting. Now they're burnt out. They want to know some of the AI tools or what could help them.
This is relatively simple and a bit complicated. By the way, do you use AI tools in your workflow?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Google Gemini, right? Obviously.
Yes, for sure.
Gemini. Yeah. None of the others. As you know, there are a lot of AI tools out there. There are new changes every day, and there are new AI tools that pops up every single day. It's physically impossible for anyone to keep up with the new AI tools, right? So if you agree with that premise, then my recommendation is you go the other way. You figure out the least amount of AI tools you need to cover all your use cases. I call it the minimum viable toolkit strategy.
Okay.
Instead of trying to fit all...
Another framework.
Instead of trying to fit all the AI or learn all the AI tools, you figure out the minimum 2 to 3 you need to do your job.
Okay, so you reverse it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Instead of wasting time learning about things that you might not need.
Exactly.
Okay.
It always starts with a use case. For example, let's say someone in your team needs to do market research, or they're doing research on your next holiday getaway, your travel plans, right? That's a use case. You need to use an AI tool to figure that out. Then you would try, oh, okay, I know that Perplexity, I know that Consensus AI, Google Gemini, Deep Research, ChatGPT, Deep Research, these are all research tools. You would use all 4, test them out, and figure out which one you like using the most. Taking a step back, I would have to say AI tools at the end of the day is still AI tools. So if they're facing burnout, I think they need to adopt a system or some sort of workflow to figure it out. I think we talked off camera about this. I use Notion to manage my life. So I use like my core system in Notion, right, for my life and my YouTube. And I use the core system for my Google work using Google Workspace tools. The tool is secondary, the system is primary. You start with the system and you can adopt it within the suite of tools, basically. I think that would be the real answer to the question, how can I stop burning out?
Yeah, because his problem is he has too many tasks just within his work life. He can't find enough time to get around every single one of them. So you're saying if you have this system where you can put all these tasks in and maybe simplify things or make them more efficient, then he'll be able to manage everything within his working hours.
Exactly. You just actually reminded me of another best practice from, I think, Make Time, the book. You want to minimize context switching. For example, if you're writing an email, Ray, and you receive a line notification, you look at the notification, you're context switching already, right?
Yeah.
And it takes on average 9 minutes for you to adapt to the new context. So let's say he's being overwhelmed. The system will tell you, okay, can you bucket together similar tasks to minimize context switching, like work on these type A tasks and type B and type C.
Yeah.
That might make things easier.
Basically, telling you how to work so that you're always in the state of flow and you're always very concentrated in the task at hand. Because you have that system, you know at the end of the day, everything has its own place and time, everything will be finished. Right. So you won't be so anxious as to, I have to get to this immediately, and be more in your own flow of things.
Exactly.
You do that using Notion?
YouTube, my side business, or like my personal life, health, managing my apartment, maintaining my apartment, learning about AI, those are all in Notion.
From what I know, you are also working with Pressplay to open up an online course.
Yeah.
So now you're even busier than before. You have this third project, you have 3 hustles at the same time. But I feel like because you're such a professional in your field, like just throughout this talk, I heard you mention so many source materials, books or authors, that I feel like you've compressed a very workable system for yourself. And you're here to share with us how that system can also work for us.
The entire point of Notion is that it's so seamless. If I were to just summarize it in one sentence, it minimizes friction so much that it makes getting work done easy. I'll give you a specific example. If you were to manage a project using Microsoft tools, you would have to create a folder in OneDrive, name the project, right? You have a folder already. Then you have your notes, meeting notes in Microsoft Word, for example. You track the project progress in Excel, right? And then use Microsoft to track tasks, right? That's what, four apps, right? In Notion, it's literally one page. You can have one project page and all the related tasks, notes, resources are in the page. You're not leaving anywhere. So it makes getting work done super simple. So my course is called Build Your Command Center Notion. So my command center is one page that does the same thing for my life. It's like one of the first things I see when I wake up and one of the last things I look at before I go to bed.
It's the way that you work around your life.
Yeah.
Your personal and your professional life. It's because of that command center you're able to avoid burnout and finish everything on time.
Exactly.
On a side note, Jeff is also a pretty eloquent Chinese speaker. Because originally I thought you couldn't speak Chinese, but it turns out he does. So
I should have pretended not to speak Chinese.
yeah, no, too late for that. So for this final segment, you have to speak in Mandarin and talk to us about your course, and we can close the video with that. So I'll hold this up while I time you, and you talk about your course.
Okay.
You ready?
Time it. Okay.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
OK， 那首先我需要先很负责任的说，如果你现在世界上最好的流程是你可以坚持用的一个流程，所以如果你现在的一套系统是没有问题的，你不会漏掉任何就任务或者笔记，你不用变。这第一，我必须得先这样说。但第二，如果你发现你是一个需要100%依赖一个系统的一个人的话，那你可以，我觉得指挥中心这个课程应该还蛮有帮助的。用一句话总结，Notion 指挥中心会把你管理生活所有的这些细节的摩擦降到极低，就要降到最低。你所有的信息、任务、笔记、想法、项目都会在一个页上，然后再加上，因为我已经把绝大部分的模板已经准备好了，所以你可以按照你自己需求来自己组合这个控制中心。所以不管你是斜杠人士，或者一个老师，或者一个学生，或者一个父母想管理一下你家人这种你都可以用到这个指挥中心的。
Whoa, that was 1 minute sharp.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I felt like you weren't wrapping up,
but
you
just
wrapped up real quick. 所以我觉得这堂课听起来，不管是你有正职工作，然后你同时可能有兼职，或者是你的正职工作的工作流程，你想要更新，你想要让它更加的有效率，透过这堂线上课程学习 Jeff 的 Core System， 因为我相信，就连我这个状态，我听 Jeff。他的生活跟工作，我就觉得他每一天要做的事情比我多很多。如果 Jeff 这样子的工作量、这样子的复杂程度都可以用 Command Center 来去 streamline 的话，一个重点是你说它可以应用在任何人的工作或生活上面，
对，
让你们自己的工作流程或者是生活可以更加的有效率的进行。然后在募资期间，如果你输入 Ray250 Notion， 还可以再领250块的优惠。All right, thank you so much, Jeff, for your time.
谢谢 Ray, thank you.
And I'll put the link to this press play course in the description box. 就下次影片见，
谢谢
拜拜。
Thank you. Bye everyone.